So we're joined this morning by our One Climate Future team of Portland and South Portland Sustainability Offices. I'm Erin, I'm with the Portland Sustainability Office. I'm joined by Katie and Troy, who's our Director of Sustainability in Portland. And then we're also joined by South Portland's office, Julie, who's the director there, Mia, Steve, Cashel, and Susan's on here also. And then we are joined by our two presenters this morning. We have Sara Mills-Knapp, who's the Director of Sustainability at GPCOG, and Gayle Bowness, who is the Municipal Climate Action Program Manager with GMRI. So to get us started this morning, we're going to do some quick updates from Julie and Troy to hear about what's going on in coastal resilience in Portland and South Portland. So Julie, if you want to start with South Portland.
Actually, how about you start, Troy, first, and I will follow up.
Sure. Great. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this morning. It's a really interesting and important topic, especially I think we had a good reminder of how important this topic is in our recent storm. So one of the things I'm most excited about we're doing here in Portland is we're launching this year work on our climate resilience overlay zone. So in One Climate Future, it talks about developing, some coastal strategies that help us build our built infrastructure in a more resilient way. So I'm working really closely with our planning department. We've hired a really great consultant, UTL, who's done similar climate and coastal resilience work in Providence and Boston. So they're a really experienced team, and we'll be, working on like standards for building in different parts of the city, whether it be immediately on the coast or upland a bit or even higher. All of the city should be participating in developing community resilience through the built environment. And so there'll be lots of opportunity to talk about that. Again, our planning department will be taking the lead and we'll be supporting that effort. And we'll be using this new map that was recently generated. Working with city staff, Army Corps of Engineers, and some partners at the state to develop a really dynamic flood model that's very sophisticated, that takes into account the topography of the land and the bay, in addition to wind and wave action. So it's a very sophisticated model, and we're excited to be able to take that, really sophisticated map to apply to the overlay zone. So that's kind of what I'm excited about this year for climate resilience and coastal resilience here in Portland. So I'll pass it to Julie.
Thanks. I just needed to adjust my audio. So hi, everyone. Great. Thanks for being with us this morning. And thanks for kicking off, Troy. So Troy mentioned our dynamic inundation flood model. And of course, that is something that we've been working on for the past year and a half, or even more, with the Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, and FEMA, and other partners. And so we're really excited that that is completed, because that's going to give us an even more nuanced vision into what possible flooding and climate impacts are going to be across our coast. So knowing that we had that model, but as it is right now, it sits as a model. We applied for a community action grant with the state, and we partnered with Gayle and Sara and Jamie Carter from NOAA and Pete Slavinsky from the Maine Geological Survey to do a coastal resilience project in South Portland. So while we're waiting for Troy and Portland to come up with their version of the resilience overlay, and we look at that to see how we might want to do something similar, we're going to do a project where we take the dynamic flood model and turn it into community engagement through GMRI, with planning forward exercises and walks, and a website with a story map and surveys. What we want to show people in South Portland is these are the climate impacts that we can expect at different types of scenarios for climate change. And then we're working with GPCOG and Sara Mills-Knapp to say, These are the types of nature-based coastal resilient solutions that we can look at to try to mitigate these effects. And then the other sort of piece that fits really perfectly together in South Portland is that we're updating our comprehensive plan right now. And so we've engaged the comprehensive plan consultants to look at how the impacts and how possible solutions might interplay with our development needs and wants through our comprehensive plan update. So that's what we have going on. And I'm sure that Gayle and Sara may talk more about that. I think we hope to kick things off this spring.
Great. Excellent. So I think we want to now get started with Sara to take on the next presentation.
Great, thanks, Troy. Let me just share my screen. Everybody see that okay? Great. Well, thank you all for having me. I am Sara Mills-Knapp. I'm the Director of Sustainability at the Greater Portland Council of Governments. For those that don't know what GPCOG is, which is what we call our organization. We're a regional planning organization that represent 25 cities and towns in the Greater Portland area. And support really all of their efforts in planning, but my team specifically is supporting sustainability efforts across the region. So it's a very exciting time, especially, a very fortuitous timing with both Portland and South Portland doing really great work on coastal resilience. Our vision for this project, which I'll introduce today, is kind of take it up a little bit higher to the regional level to look at sort of regional resilience as our individual member communities are addressing their municipal resilience. As we know, the climate hazards and impacts know no boundaries, and they happen across town boundaries and across our region. So we're hoping to, really coordinate very well with all of our communities and start to address resilience at a regional level, looking at the coastal impacts that are coming our way and are happening right now from the climate crisis. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, a little bit about nature-based solutions, just to go over what that means. Whoops, there we go. We can talk a little bit about volunteer opportunities and how all of the residents across all of our towns and cities can get involved. And then Gayle from GMRI will talk a little bit about their role in the program, which we're really excited to bring their science and their expertise and community engagement to the project. So the project, what is it? It is a 2-year planning process with 11 communities all along Casco Bay. So all of basically from Scarborough up to Brunswick along the coast, and our island communities are involved as well. We kicked off, I don't know if many of you have maybe heard about this in 2021. We got the project funding and took a very long time to go through the federal contracting process. So it was slightly delayed. It's funded through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation's Coastal Resilience Fund, which we're very excited and pleased to have gotten the funding, and now we're finally kicking off the work. So the goal is to really prepare communities for the coastal impacts of climate change, and that's everything from flooding to erosion and other impacts that we're seeing. And to focus on start to build an understanding of nature-based solutions and how those types of solutions can specifically address the risk that we're facing here in Casco Bay. So the goals of the project are pretty focused both on building municipal understanding, but also engaging residents and understanding of what the risks are that we're facing. So across the region, sort of where are our most vulnerable sites, and identifying really those high priority resilience projects that could help improve the risk at those sites. And we'd like to make this sort of as accessible as possible. It's not just a very technical planning exercise, but it's an engagement process through which we really want to hear about the concerns of residents across the region about the climate impacts we're facing on the coast, and start to engage on solutions that involve everybody, not just planners, not just municipal staff, but everybody who lives in this region. I live in South Portland myself, so uniquely interested, engaged, as a lot of us I know all live in the region. So we're very excited. And really looking to kind of weave in the solutions that we do find to the individual municipalities' planning processes. So they'll be reflective in comprehensive plans and reflected in other planning to make sure that this is really well integrated across the region. So chiming, there's 5 phases of the project. Like I said, it's a 2-year project. We're really in the kind of beginning phases right now of assessing where our municipalities are at with their planning processes. Everybody's really in a different place. Every town is quite unique and is in, moving at their own speed in terms of climate action planning. So we really want to make sure we meet all of our communities where they are and provide the support that they need. We're really excited that Portland and South Portland are really leaders in this region. So we are excited to team up with both of these communities to kind of be on the front edge of understanding what's the best way to engage with communities and what's the best way to help support understanding of the risks that we're facing. There's an intensive data component to the project, which is exciting as well. There's so much going on to improve the data and understanding of the types of risks that we're facing here in the region. There's new modeling, there's new tide gauges that GMRI has. So we're getting so much more information in, and what we're trying to do is sort through it, provide it in a digestible way for residents so it doesn't feel so highly technical, and make sure it's visual so you can really see. This is climate change is a very visual, I think, problem. Like it's you want to see where is, how is my neighborhood going to be impacted? How is my neighborhood next door? How are the services that I access every day going to be impacted? So we want to try and provide that information as much as possible. There are lots of data gaps. We do not have perfect data. We're going to be focusing a lot on habitat and ecosystems, as well as demographics, trying to understand what particular populations are going to be impacted. And, the challenge with that is, the census is not particularly accurate. There's habitats and ecosystems are not mapped and studied as closely as we'd like. And so there are data gaps, but we're going to do the best we can and hopefully identify those that can be filled. The exciting news is that there's a lot of progress being made on the sea level rise and front, understanding the flooding impacts that we might face. So that's exciting. Then we'll move into a kind of training and engagement phase of the project, which Gayle will go a little bit more in depth on that and how we're going to be working with communities. And then in the background, we're really going to be working. We have a great advisory committee of wonderful technical expertise across the region that we're pulling together to try and identify the highest risk sites across the region and start to develop some ideas for solutions. So these will not be fully developed project solutions, but to think about opportunities that municipalities could have to really further develop a nature-based solution at one particular site. And then the hope is to, provide connections to additional funding opportunities to bring more money to the region to actually get these projects developed and get shovels in the ground and start developing real projects that address our risk. So when we say nature-based solutions, I feel like that can feel pretty vague, and it is actually a very broad category. So it basically just means sort of things that are not hard, what we call like gray infrastructure. They can include bioswales, living shorelines. They're really meant to sort of, mitigate the impacts of climate hazards, but also providing environmental, economic, and social benefits. So there's, like I said, a wide range, restoring salt marshes, just protecting open space around areas of risk, planting native plants and grasses, installing living shorelines, which is sort of a much bigger project, protecting dunes and beaches. Like there's just such a wide array of things that can be done in the nature-based solutions. And there's a lot of focus both at the national level and more locally on trying to understand these solutions because they can be more cost-effective, more efficient use of resources. They usually have lower maintenance costs. They provide, open space and enjoyment of our coastline, and hopefully help support tourism and economic benefits as well. So they're really right now being sort of recognized as one of the best practices for building resilience across the country. And there's a lot of great, interesting solutions across the country that are being done. The challenge here is that it's so site specific, and it's very, the context of everything around you is very is sort of makes it that there's no one size fits all solution. And so I think that's what we're really trying to do with this project, is understand what is the range of solutions that could work for any one site. So currently, we're, like I said, sort of moving through the first phase and second phase of the project. We're really engaging with the community, trying to get everybody engaged in understanding of the project. We have a great project website, which I'll share in the chat, and abilities where so you can sign up to get updates of the project. We are working on developing data profiles, which eventually will be available on our website. And these are really, we're trying to do, this is an example of one of, we're playing with the maps right now. So this was not a final draft, but looking at, this is Freeport, I believe, looking across, sort of bringing together all the coastal hazards, looking at sea level rise impacts, erosion, potential storm impacts, mapping the ecosystems in each community, salt marshes, eelgrass, habitat for endangered species, and then overlaying social vulnerability to see where particularly underrepresented and most at-risk communities are, and then layering on infrastructure. So what are the roads, bridges, dams, culverts, essential services that people are accessing? And that will all sort of feed into a regional map, but we're also going to have town-specific maps for each town and city. So this is, the balance of trying to make sure that as much data as there is possible, but that it's readable and digestible. We're still playing with that, but these will be available on our website eventually, and we'll send out more information. And they're going to be story maps, so they'll have some information as you're kind of zooming through about like, what am I really looking at here? Like, for example, here, this is sea level rise projections along with FEMA flood map overlay. So what we're trying to do is really identify, this will help us do our data development of understanding where are the most at-risk sites, but it also is to help you understand what potential impacts could look like in your communities, in your neighborhoods. So that will be coming in the next 3 or 4 months. So just to talk a little bit about volunteer opportunities, I know this can all feel scary, and especially when we're already experiencing the impacts from the storms that we saw in December, which was really fascinating and scary. There's, it was a very intense storm, and there's been some great coverage and photos. There are lots of opportunities to volunteer. These 2 pictures, one, Gayle's going to talk a little bit more about the community science, but this was taken during the storm. So there's a lot of ways that you can engage to help feed data into the system so we can understand what are the types of impacts that we're seeing in communities when there is a flood event or a storm event. And then this is also a picture that I just grabbed from the Willard Beach Facebook page. They had a restoration event after the storm. Willard Beach was highly impacted. A lot of the dune grass was swept away, and there was some volunteer groups that came out to replant some dune grass, to put barriers back up around the dunes, and to plant these sticks that are help kind of secure the beach and make sure that erosion is limited during the winter time. So that was organized sort of organically. So there's a lot of events that everybody could take place around the region that everybody could be a part of. There's local event groups, like the Waterfront Alliance had a really great presentation this week about the impacts of the storm and where things really worked and where things really didn't. And so I think that is very helpful to kind of just understand what the impacts are on the particular sites that we love around the region. So I'm going to hand it over to Gayle now so she can talk a little bit about GMRI's role.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Do you mind unsharing so I can share? Thank you. And Zoom keeps telling my internet is unstable, so apologies if that affects anything. We'll cross our fingers. All right. Can you all see that? Super. All right. So my name is Gayle. I work at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute. I manage our municipal climate action program within our climate center here at GMRI. And broadly as an organization, we're working to support coastal communities in the Gulf of Maine region and a little outside of that as well, to be resilient in the face of a rapidly changing environment as our ocean waters are warming and our sea levels are rising. So my work primarily is supporting municipalities and better understanding what those changes are. And as Sara alluded to, a great method for that is community science. So our role in this project is to support communities in engaging in the Climate Ready Casco Bay project by collecting that local data through community science. It's a great process to learn about the topic, to get out and to see and witness climate impacts firsthand, and to collect really much needed data so we can understand the impacts in our communities. We've been doing community science as an organization for about 2 decades now, and our latest work is through the Ecosystem Investigation Network. I will drop links in the chat afterwards. On this, you'll find our coastal flooding, sea level rise, and storms project, which we actually have been doing with Portland and South Portland for the past couple of years. And working with the towns, I work to identify coastal flood monitoring sites. So those are those locations that communities care about. They're places that are already vulnerable, they're publicly accessible, that communities at a municipal level can take some action towards building resilience. These sites represent the diversity of impacts within communities, whether it's to infrastructure, to ecosystems, to places that we care about, like parks, beaches, transportation, whether that's trails or roads, and of course, kind of central emergency services, thinking about our emergency evacuation routes and how we move about our community to get to services that we rely upon. So we've been collecting data from these locations for a couple of years, but through this project, we're really excited to advance what we've already been doing and to improve upon that. And Sara alluded to one of the projects that we have going on, which is to install these low-cost water level monitoring devices in locations, and this is broader than the Climate Ready Casco Bay, in locations kind of throughout the state, and we're looking to grow this project. So we've installed one of these devices in the Back Cove in Portland to better understand what water levels are there. Currently, there's a water level monitor and a tide gauge in the Portland Harbor. What we're curious about is the Back Cove the same. We're looking forward to installing one up the Fore River to better understand the riverine influences on water levels as well. And then across the state, Maine has about 5,000 miles of tidal coastline and currently 5 NOAA kind of serviced tide gauges. So there's a lot of unmonitored coast. So we're really excited to expand on this work. So this will give us these graphs that you can see on the left, but that data only tells us so much. What we really need to do is understand what these water levels mean. And we can do that by getting out into locations and collecting that data. So this can show you those locations that Portland has identified as being ones of importance to them. And I'll drop the link to this map in the chat afterwards so you can explore the locations that Portland and South Portland have identified. And when you get to these locations, you may experience or witness flooding, and witnessing high water can happen in different ways. You may just see like a sunny day like this where water is where it shouldn't be. You can't even see the edge of the parking lot in this photo. This is on Widgery Wharf between Chandler's Wharf and Union Wharf right here on Commercial Street in Portland. Or you may witness things that show you where the water used to be. So looking for evidence of high water could be where seaweed has been pushed up to. It could be erosion, like Sara mentioned earlier. So as I said, we're advancing that coastal flood community monitoring project, the community science project, to create a new protocol that will get us observing more about what we're seeing as opposed to uploading just the photo evidence, time and location data. We're really asking community scientists to take into account the weather impacts that they're witnessing too, so we can better understand how weather has an influence on water level. So there's questions around the wind that you're witnessing. So is it mild wind, moderate, major wind, the different types of precipitation that might be happening, the direction of any wind that is there as well. And then we're also asking questions to get to kind of the heart of how do we prioritize our actions and solve for these actions. So asking questions about what communities are curious about to learn more, which areas are they concerned about the most, which types of adaptation actions would they prioritize, whether that's mitigation, nature-based solutions, hard infrastructure. Do you want to take kind of baby steps towards these solutions, or do we want to make big, bold investments and actions to prevent flooding in the future? So we've got a survey in there as well, which will support municipalities in making these decisions. So we're currently testing out this new protocol. The QR code that you can see up here will give you a link to that new data collection protocol that we'll be testing out on the 23rd, which is a predicted high water event. Without extra kind of weather or storms like what we saw on December 23rd, we will likely see flooding at about the level that you can see in this picture. And this is down on the Portland Pier, just kind of behind the road that takes you out to Luke's Lobster. So then what do we do with all of this data once we understand what's happening on a local level? How do we then have conversations as a community about actions forward? What's the path forward? So this is another piece of the project that GMRI will be supporting through the Climate Ready Casco Bay, as well as some of the work that South Portland has funded. We have developed a workshop called Planning Forward, which supports communities in having really complex conversations to really grapple with the sea level rise problems kind of at hand today and those that are to come in the future, and to really engage in the complexities of climate planning. At the heart of it, it's bringing in diverse voices from a community and putting community values first in that decision-making process. So the very first step of this workshop is eliciting community values. You can see some examples from a workshop that we held on North Haven with the communities of North Haven and Vinyl Haven here. After we've elicited community values, we work together in small groups to look through different sea level rise scenarios that communities may face. So you're looking through different decades from 2020 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, and thinking about, all right, well, we know that with sea level rise projections, we may see these events, but because of sea level rise, these things could also happen, and really putting those scenarios in context with communities. Participants have resilience strategy cards that they use to guide that discussion around which solutions they want to prioritize. And again, coming back to those community values, making sure that those strategies are reflective of what a community as a whole really prioritizes and values. So it's a great process to really engage folks in that planning process. And it's also a great exercise for municipal decision makers to kind of listen in, observe, and collect that local data, that local knowledge from community members. So through this project, we'll be working to localize the content in this workshop, Planning Forward, to reflect kind of the outcomes and the data that we get through the Climate Ready Casco Bay. So that way the scenarios are really reflective of what we're observing here in Casco Bay regarding vulnerabilities, and the solutions are also really reflective of those that are recommended by the project, which, as Sara noted, will be primarily focusing on nature and nature-based solutions. So we're really excited to bring these to communities throughout Casco Bay in Portland and South Portland through this project. So that's it that I had on the community engagement front. So I will pass things back to the sustainability offices.
Thank you so much, Sara and Gayle, for those presentations. That was, I mean, just seeing some of those photos is really like eye-opening. But yeah, thank you so much. And if you're not, if some people attending haven't been to a Coffee and Climate before, we try to keep a really large amount of time open for questions and try to have a conversation about what we just, what our presenters just talked about. Also, any of the links or resources and like the presentation slides we'll send out in an email after the fact, because we don't have a chat in the meeting itself, but we'll send any of those links that are mentioned after the fact. So we'd definitely like to open it up to questions. If you have a question, you can use like the raise hand function or just unmute and just ask whatever's on your mind. But again, yeah, thank you so much, Gayle and Sara, for those really informative presentations. Bill?
Yes, thank you for those excellent presentations. And I like the way, as a first line approach, the nature-based remedial actions. But I think, excuse me, I'm kind of out of breath here. I think as a backup, some engineered solutions are going to be required. I guess I've heard of mentioned putting up a floodgate across Back Cove. And I'm wondering if any organization is looking at, again, as a secondary backup operation, any engineered solutions. Thank you.
I guess I can jump in on that a bit. So the tie gate under Tukey's Bridge concept is certainly one that comes up a lot. We don't have any active planning or design work for that. It's definitely conceptual, and I can certainly see how that would work. I think in general, in terms of sort of like I have a colleague who calls it heroic infrastructure, like large scale, like seawalls. That's probably not in the cards, but we're definitely doing sorts of engineering solutions. In fact, if you look at the Back Cove currently, with you'll notice that the soccer fields are dug up, and there's a large water storage tanks being constructed, and they'll be having to design the edges of that to accommodate sea level rise, as well as ongoing tidal action. And so that we're definitely considering those things for any project that has a seafront facing component. So definitely in the works, and certainly things we need to make sure we have strongly considered as we do more development, particularly on the waterfront. So.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. And I would just add to that, it's a really great question, because I think it obviously points out that we're going to need a really wide range of solutions across all of our coastline here. And there definitely will be sites that are, will need engineered solutions. I also, like to point out that there's a really wide range of kind of smaller maintenance type solutions or sort of site specific. There was a great example in Portland at the Waterfront Alliance meeting the other day where they were talking about how there was no flooding near the Whole Foods, which generally would see a lot of flooding. And they were talking about backflow preventers that they put on the stormwater drains there. Is that correct, Troy? I think that's
absolutely correct. Yeah, it definitely makes a big difference. It's not going to solve the problem entirely, but it's a really important step.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, as we focus more on talking about solutions as we move through this project, it will be important. While we are focusing on sort of understanding nature-based solutions, there is no reason why we shouldn't be having a broader discussion about engineered solutions and maintenance type solutions that can be really impactful.
Thank you. Caitlin has a question.
Yes, hi. So thanks again. This was really exciting and interesting to hear about. I had another question about the nature-based solutions, because that's super exciting. And you had mentioned that these are the kind of things that are also happening all over the country in different sites. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions of where to go look for resources of ideas of like who else is doing this and how are they doing it. And I mean, I know I can just go to like Google and be like, dear Google, tell me about nature-based. But if you had suggestions of like, here's some folks who are doing it well, go get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, a great resource is the funding source that we got this money from, which we can also add a link to in the resources that we send out. There are projects across the country. So it's an annual funding source, and they fund both planning projects and hard infrastructure projects. So that's a great place to look at the National Fish and Wildlife Coastal Resilience Fund. It's fascinating to see the types of projects that they have funded, and they're sort of always focused on nature-based solutions. So that's a good place to look. Also, the White House just came out with a report like a month ago, maybe, on nature-based solutions, which is a really good place to dive into and see what suggestions. So it's really an exciting time because happily, the federal government and the state are really aligned with proposing and understanding that nature-based solutions are really effective. So I think those are two really good resources to just see what's happening across the country. And it's fascinating to see, in different parts of the country, what works really well, what doesn't work. The coastline is just so, even in Maine, our coastline is so varied and different. And actually, I did want to call out in Southern Maine, our sister planning agency to the south, this Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission, they have done a similar project that they're sort of further along in with our Southern Maine communities called Climate Ready Coast, I think is the name of it. I'll put a link in the resources. So SMPDC is running that project along with the Wells Reserve, and they have a great mapping exercise as well, and a website that you can visit to see sort of the impacts on our southern coast, which is really quite different. From Scarborough down to the border with New Hampshire, the coastline is quite different there. So they're exploring nature-based solutions for that area as well, which could be well, and they're really leading the way and helping to inform this project, which is exciting.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think Sara made a really good point in that, just that we do have such a varied coast here in Maine with our large tidal ranges, which are about like 10 feet in southern Maine and up to 15 feet down east. And then we have our weather, like all of the nor'easters that we can get and kind of the tropical storms in the summer. And then we have temperature that gets really cold, and there's ice that's going to be kind of bumping up against our shorelines too. So although we can look to these really great ideas and examples elsewhere, we're also a really unique coastline. So having these studies happening here in place, such as this one, is just a really great way to better understand how we can take those ideas and adapt them to fit kind of the unique characteristics we have here along the Maine coast.
I just want to add on to that because I feel like both Gayle and Sara had really good points about how this isn't necessarily going to be one big solution. There are places even along the coastline in South Portland and potentially Portland where we may want to let the water come in and focus on wave attenuation. And there's other places where we might look to sort of more of a gray infrastructure or hardscape space where we don't want water to come in. So there's going to be, not one size fits all, even within the city.
Yeah, and to build on that, part of what we talk about in One Climate Future is thinking about what's appropriate land uses for vulnerable parts of the coastline. And so, even in a place with a developed waterfront like Portland, there's opportunities to think about how we use land. So, for instance, on Commercial Street, there's a great big parking lot right now near where the ferry terminal is. And that's going to be, rather than developing that into some sort of structures or buildings, that's going to be turned into a park. And we're really excited to have received some federal money to actually make that a reality. So, that's the type of development that, it's compatible with sea level rise because it can help absorb floodwaters. It also doesn't put, people in vulnerable situations living in structures or in buildings that could be impacted by storm surges or high winds. So there's lots of different approaches.
Great, I see Callie has a question.
When you were talking about replanting the grasses at Willard Beach, I couldn't help but wonder, they're replanting because the water had taken away the other grass, the former grass. And I just wondered if that, how useful that was going to be, because you're replacing it and it might be taken away as well. And doesn't it take time to, get its roots down and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think it's good to point out that in the future we will be seeing, the event that we saw in December was historic. And hopefully we won't have another one of those for a while. So I think the hope is that, we can give the time, the dune grass time. And I think apparently there will be more dune grass restoration and planting in the spring, which is apparently the key time to plant dune grasses in South Portland. So I think it's, yeah, you're absolutely right that like we need to make sure that there's time in between, that we're putting in solutions that can really have time to take hold and protect. I think, the hope, obviously in the future, there'll be more and more of these historic storms and sort of less time to rebuild back in between storms. So we need to focus on solutions that we can sort of deploy quickly. I think the hope, at Willard Beach is that especially, blocking off those areas and making sure that people aren't walking on them, will give it some time to take root. And so it will be there for the next storm instead of, it eating further and further away at the dune grasses. So great question.
I just might add to that, Sarah, you could probably speak to this, but the nature-based solutions maybe aren't necessarily a one and done solution.
Yeah.
It might be the dune grass, but also some nature-based solutions that help prevent the water from hitting that dune grass as hard as it has. And so I don't know if we have eelgrass projects planned for that area, but different solutions that can help sort of mitigate the water as it comes along. And by the way, we're talking all about coastal resilience today, but there's upland solutions that we are coming up with, low impact development stuff, so that the water, it's all about how the water works within our cities and how we can work with the different water patterns and the different ways that water is going to come into our cities. So, if we just keep doing, you're right, one thing over and over again, it's not working, then we'll try other things. But it might not take all at once.
Caroline, you had your hand up.
So thanks for having this today. It was really helpful to understand what this program is all about. I think the solutions might be the easy part. The data collection is the part that I found most fascinating today. I think the way you have this set up, it seems to be a great combination of taking the science and the data, but engaging the community. Who are there people on the ground that are going to observe some of these situations that maybe don't show on a map? Yeah. So I'm ready to hit send and get people involved. I know Bob Stevens from Freeport's on this call. He has even a bigger email list than I do. So what is the best way we can help you? And is there something you can give us to get our community interested? Because I'm pretty sure we could have people out there doing observations today. And, Freeport, you showed a great map. We have a lot of nooks and crannies that are affected. We don't have the big expansive beaches, and we don't have a huge commercial street, but I think involving people and getting them engaged and invested in this and mixing with the science is great. So how can we help you guys with that portion of it?
Great, thanks, Caroline. I think two ways. One definitely is in getting signed up for the community science project with GMRI. So Abigail Long, I think, is here, and she's the Resilience Corps Fellow that is placed with GMRI this year and is helping towns get signed up. So we can do that right away and share that information. So, and sort of select sites throughout Freeport that you want volunteers to be looking at. And I think it'd probably be helpful to work with Bob and the other groups in Freeport for that. And then, signing up on the website to get involved. And, like I said, there's a lot of other planning processes, as the planner in Freeport going on, in which we want to integrate this work as much as possible. So the climate action planning with comprehensive planning, with this coastal planning, and, sharing the details with communities as much as possible and encouraging, I would ask that everybody encourage their neighbors to come out if there's an event. Especially places to give feedback. A lot of the towns in the region are going through climate action planning processes soon, Freeport, Yarmouth, Brunswick will be as well, that will be helping to support. So those areas of engagement will be really important to hear from residents. So I think, yeah, the community science side, and then just keeping informed on events that are happening throughout the region. And Gayle, do you have anything to add on the engagement?
Yeah, no, I think you hit that there, Sarah. Caroline, if we haven't been in touch, we will be in touch. You'll hear from myself or Abigail, and we look forward to getting the process started. We're also giving a presentation through the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board. They're hosting us on February 6th. So really looking forward to working with you all soon.
Sylvia, I see.
Thanks for your question, Caroline. I'm actually from Freeport, and I was just about to ask how I could get involved with things. I'm a recent college grad, and I'm home for a bit, and I would love to get involved with coastal resilience things in my area, whether that's my long-term career or something shorter. So I'm curious in particular about getting younger people involved, not just in the fieldwork aspect, but in the planning bit. Have there been any things reaching out to high school students or college students in the area?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. It is my mission in life to get young people to show up to community meetings. So I think that there's a couple things. Yeah, the Freeport CAN and the Freeport Sustainability Advisory Board are good places to start, and Caroline could always put you in contact with those. I think Freeport CAN has a great website, the Climate Action Network in Freeport. We do have a climate action planning process, like I said, coming up in Freeport, where there'll be great opportunities to engage. We'll have a few workshops on climate action that we'll be sharing through the various, the newsletter, the sustainability newsletter in Freeport. So that's always a good place to look. Our organization, GPCOG, hosts a cohort of AmeriCorps fellows every year. So if you're interested in any, it's a great career building opportunity. It's a one-year placement where we place fellows around the region, either in our organization or in nonprofits and municipalities, to learn more about resilience. So that's a plug for that organization. For that opportunity, you can email me about that as well. And yeah, in terms of getting young people, tell all your friends to come to planning and community engagement meetings. I think it would be really helpful. Troy or Julie, I don't know if you have thoughts on that in your towns.
I do. So yeah, I think it's really important. And we're seeing it more and more in Portland, younger people becoming much more involved with our Sustainability and Transportation Committee. We had a great kind of committee goal setting just on Wednesday, and we had amazing public participation. Many of the people who spoke and shared their ideas of what the committee should work on were young people. There's some increasingly active groups that center the voices of younger people in the region and the state. So Maine Youth for Climate Justice is a group that's been involved and sharing their thoughts with us. And also there's in Portland, there's the Portland Climate Action Team, which is organizing around trying to, draw attention to One Climate Future and to, promote climate action in the city. And I know there's young people involved with that organization. I think Jade, I saw Jade online here, recent college grad as well, who's engaged with the work here in Portland. So.
Just to add on a little bit more broadly too, GMRI's education team is really committed to science education, climate education for students across the state. So if you're, I think, under the age of 25 at this point, you've likely been through and grew up in Maine, you've likely been to our organization, have gone through a hands-on science experience, introducing you to kind of climate impacts in the Gulf of Maine and different science careers and kind of those opportunities. But we do work really closely with teachers throughout the state doing professional development around building their confidence in doing climate education in the classroom. Some other great networks to connect with be the Maine Changemakers Network, as well as Just Me for Just Us. So there's really awesome work happening with youth and climate action in the state.
I think we have more one-off events. We don't have a committee per se, but we do a lot of surveys and a lot of events, and we try to advertise those in the One Climate Future newsletter. So I would invite you to just keep being on that newsletter.
I guess I have a question. Getting back to talking about dune grass. Has there been any discussion with, I guess it would be extension services, to see whether there's a more resilient form of dune grass that could be put in? We have a cottage in York County not on the water, fortunately, but near there, and we just had some horrible flooding. And it seems to me, as long as I can remember, dune grass replacement has just been a constant issue. It strikes me that the root system in dune grass could be improved upon, or that there could be some development of dune grass that was far more resilient, so that replacing it constantly wasn't such a challenge and such an occupation.
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know, Gayle, if you have any specific dune grass expertise, but that is definitely something that we will explore for this project. It's a great question.
I would be very happy to explore that. I have a relationship with Extension Services, so it might be something I could do pretty easily. I get back to Troy or to Julie on what I can learn about that. But it seems to me that would be an incredibly valuable help.
Mm-hmm.
We could do that.
Yeah, really great question to explore, Lee. Dune grass is not on my resume, and I look forward to hearing what you find out.
I'll check into it.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, great, thanks a lot. I think, Bob, did you have your hand up a moment ago?
Yeah, I did. I just wanted to circle back to Sylvia Holland interest and tell her that, yes, Freeport can. We'd love to hear from you. We've got a land and water action group, which we'd love to have you plug into and help spread the word and become a part of. And I just want to thank you all for having this event today and letting us participate. We're learning our big thrust is avoidance rather than necessarily what to do to sort of live with it. But we know both are important. We would like to I guess this adds in my mind to the need to push for avoidance as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I would just like to add, we have a couple more minutes left for questions, but I just want to let people know that to me, this is the tail beginning of a really concerted effort to start to plan for more resilience in our cities. And not only, we have this dynamic flood model, we have ordinances in the works and engagement sessions in the works. And I think there's a lot of federal funding, grant funding coming down the pike for this. So there's a lot more that can be done. And I just encourage people, I see different people on here that I love to work with, and to just keep sort of figuring out if there's a way that you want your particular group of people to be engaged or to weigh in on this, whether you're realtors or college sector or whatever, however we can work together to figure out how to really educate our whole community. I say this particularly for South Portland because, we ran around so excited and taking pictures and videos of everything on December 23rd to document the flooding. But we haven't seen the flooding that Portland has seen. And I think, I keep saying we're not going to see the really bad flooding until we do, and then it's going to be here to stay. And so as much as we can start talking about this and modeling this now for people to plan for it, the better.
Yeah, and I'll add that this is really fantastic having this, we have people from all around the Casco Bay region talking about this issue because it certainly affects all of us. So I really appreciate having GPCOG and GMRI kind of convening all of the voices in Casco Bay to have this conversation and helping mobilize action on the coast. So it's really, thanks a lot for that work, and we're really happy to be participants in it. And it's a great way to help mobilize residents who want to get involved in a really meaningful and tangible way. So.
Well, thank you both for having us today. This is really exciting to see all the energy behind the effort. So I'm looking forward to the next 2 years.
Cool. Great. Any wrap up words, Erin?
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you again to our presenters, Sara and Gayle. We had so many really good questions too. We had a really great, this just great engagement today. I'd just say, I think people heard about this event maybe in different ways, but a great way to hear about any future copying climates is through our One Climate Future newsletter. If you aren't already signed up, you can sign up on oneclimatefuture.org. Also, our offices both have Instagram. We share our upcoming events on there also. And then just look out for an email from me probably later today that has like all of the links that were mentioned today, along with hopefully our presentation slides as well, and this recording. So thank you again for joining us this morning, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.